Hello, I'm Justin.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we're talking about action figures and all things action figure-y. This is going to be much more of a discussion base, more like something you'd find in a podcast. What sparked this whole idea is, what is the purpose and or difference of having more retail available action figures versus having these high-end, much more expensive, what we would term craft action figures?
Craft versus major brand.
Like craft beer versus major retail is kind of the division we made. It's not even retail, right? Because you can buy some of this stuff at retail stores.
Some of them.
But then Hasbro and Mattel are the two biggest action figure companies, are now making adult-centered high-end toys. But even then, the price doesn't go up to what Neca Super 7. I'll start with why I wanted to do this video. I bought for the first time recently, if you've seen our video for Joe Fest, I bought Zaymat Paoli. I never bought a classified figure. I bought some other action figures. This figure blew me away. I had been collecting the Neca Gargoyles and the Super 7 Thundercats because those are properties I want and I'm interested in. Several years ago, I dipped my toe into Four Horsemen's Mythic Legion, and so I was abreast of what action figures were out there. But when I opened this guy up, I could not stop playing with him. The whole car ride back, I just kept saying, this is awesome. This is amazing. This is so high quality. And this was $25. That's what blew me away, I think, more than anything else. Compare that to Thundercats, which you can pretty much only buy from things like Big Bad, Entertainment Earth. These are around the $50 range for one figure. Now, it comes with a ton of accessories. And then you have Neca, which are in the $10 cheaper range, typically around the $40 range. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Let's talk about this.
Let's do it.
6-inch action figures. Why 6 inches, Kyle?
Most of these aren't 6 inches. Most of these are 7.
They call it 6-inch scale. What does that mean? Where does it come from?
1/6, basically. I think that's an extremely loose term. Most of these are 7 inches, 6.5. This one's 6.5 inches. Hasbro classified G.I. Joes. They're closer to a true 6-inch scale because Varanus is 6 inches. CoverGirl is 6 inches. So it's, 1/6 the scale of a normal person.
Say the average person in the action figure hero world is 6 feet tall. So that's where the 1/6 scale
1
comes
inch is
from.
a foot.
Figures were huge before that, back in the 60s and 70s, and then
They're 12-inch.
12-inch, and then they went to the Star Wars, and then Hasbro made their little G.I. Joe 3 3/4 inch, right? And now 6-inch kind of reigns supreme right now.
That's what everybody wants.
Why is that?
I think it's the amount of detail you can get on these. This is my opinion. The amount of detail you can get on a 6-inch figure is way more than you can on a 3 3/4, but they're not so cost prohibitive at a 12-inch scale.
And then you can work in so many joints as technology has progressed. Now they model everything in computers. There's so much more detail that you can do with modeling things in computer rather than by hand. And then
It's so much, like you said, the technology, they can do so much more now. Toys are so much better.
it was really the joints that blew me away, because I did buy a Marvel Legends Rogue because I always wanted this character in this version of her from the 90s. And then I opened this guy. 2 shoulder articulations.
Yeah.
It has a hinge forward and back. And I think the reason they do that is for holding guns, probably. So you can bring it in and bring it to the side more. But then it had the ball joint as well. And it just blew me away how good it was. Like, this thing was $25? I've been paying $40 and $50. I've been paying double that for the stuff that wasn't as good.
And no pins, pinless elbows.
How do they do that?
They insert a piece rather than, another process where they have to put a pin in through and glue it in.
What's better?
This is way better. You can get more articulation on a smaller figure. So that's why the females with the smaller arms can have double jointed elbows, like CoverGirl over here.
So there's no pins on her?
Not in the elbows. I don't think in the knees either.
So why do they choose pins on some of them, like Crocmaster has pins? Because
They might be hardier. To tell you the truth, I don't know.
interesting. Okay, I didn't realize there were so many differences.
Yeah, even within the same line, there's.
And then, like, the Mythic Legion has that a stiff hinge ball joint kind of thing that only goes one way, but that allows them to have the bicep roll and the hinge in one joint.
That's kind of like the Revoltech pin, and then it rotates inside the socket. You know, different technologies, different ways of accomplishing the same thing, but this, he only gets like a 90, and depending on the mold and the arm, you might get slightly less than 90.
I was really disappointed with the Thundercats. I want to make a whole video on Thundercats, are they worth it? The Super 7 in general. Higher price point, and I don't think it's as good in some ways. In other ways, it's vastly superior. What is the major difference, in your opinion, between these Mattel, Hasbro action figures and these high-end collector, harder to get, usually only through websites, figures?
In my opinion, it's usually the paint. That is an expensive process. I think some people don't understand or they don't care. Painting a figure is expensive. It is hand done. They don't go down an assembly line and they're sprayed. A person has to pick it up, lay it in a paint mapping tray, and they have to hand paint it. That's why you get overspray sometimes, because they don't put it all the way in the mold and it kind of leaks through.
So it's cheaper for them to mold the plastic in the color and then just assemble it. That's way cheaper than having, because what's the most expensive part of any manufacturing?
That is the mold, the steel mold.
Over time, the most expensive I thought was labor.
The single,
The single most expensive thing is labor.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wait a minute, these are made in China, they're paying these people like $2 a year. It's still more expensive over time. Like, yeah, a single mold might cost thousands of dollars, and then you can only use it for so long before it breaks. But over time, especially in countries where their business practices are a little nicer, you have to pay insurance, you have to pay unemployment insurance, you have to pay all these things. Every employee costs money, far beyond what you're paying them hourly. That's where the cost comes from, and that's why you're saying paint is the most expensive, not from the paint itself, though paint is getting
it's the process, because every time you add another paint app, that's another 2 minutes you have to add to the assembly. That's less figures you can create in a day.
So I think objectively, the Super 7, the high-end figures, Super 7, Neca, and Four Horsemen are objectively way better in paint. You can tell from the Lion-O all the little grains in his hair.
Now he has multiple layers. They sprayed it once and then they painted it again.
It's molded in a color, and then they sprayed it once, and they sprayed it again, and maybe a third time, right?
Possibly.
How do they get the detail in the eyes?
Sometimes they're stamped. You put the head in a...
Oh, and
it's a paint stamp. Yeah, somebody has to stand there with the machine that puts it down and puts it in the right spot.
And then just look at the helmet of this Cyclops here. How many colors do you see in that?
Multiple. It's got the plastic color, and then it's got metallic paint on it, and then they do some brushing to give it that scratched up metal look. Those are multiple colors, and then you got pins back here. So this was 4, 5, 6 different paint apps.
Steps for each of his armor pieces.
If they're doing assembly line where they're just making the same figure over and over, you don't have to retrain them, because every time there's a new figure,
that's true,
they get painted different. These paint trays that they go into, they have to be taught how to do that. To get this look, you have to show them how to do that. Now, if you have an experienced worker, they've done it probably before on another figure, but it's not going to be exactly the same.
So they don't put Lionel's eyes upside down by accident.
Right.
I did not realize this, but any kind of soft material is very expensive as well.
That's all added on. That has to be glued on, stitched, and all that stuff. It's just time consuming and use up more time.
The more figures you can make, the more figures you can sell, the cheaper it becomes for you. And look at that claw shield, the metallic, all the little paint apps on that. But then there's no gradation on his skin. They don't have the lines between his muscles. Look at this Skull Warrior, I forget his name.
He's Frank.
Actually, all the Skull guys have puns on bones. Like there's Tibius and Mandala. But look at all the paint apps on that armor. It's ridiculous how good this guy is.
And paint's expensive. I mean, that's really what you're paying for.
Is it worth it?
That's up to the collector.
Love me some gargoyles. Lots of gradation. They paint in between the muscles. However, this is a $40 figure versus Lion-O or the Mythic Legion, which are in the $50 range. The other big difference, or it used to be the big difference besides paint, is accessories. I don't know where this started, but it's almost like this obsession. Like, we can't sell it to an adult collector unless it has a bazillion accessories. It has to have 17 different heads, 6 different hands, and they don't have to do anything. There could be the Shakespearean hand, the relaxed hand, the pointing hand, the gnarly hand. It's gone out of control. What I do with those, I don't know what you do. I just put them all in a Ziploc bag and I never touch them.
You pick your favorite one, yeah.
Yes! I'm not doing stop motion with these things. You know, I mean, I don't need that many accessories. And then this is another rant of mine. It's too much. I think it artificially drives up the cost. You gotta think, you've hired an artist, molding and all that, production, you gotta paint those extra heads and stuff. There's some of those that I think are really cool and worth it, especially if it's a licensed figure, where it's like, oh yeah, he did that all the time. Oh yeah, that's a cool expression. But then like the Thundercats, these ultimate Thundercats, they come with stuff like that happened on one episode.
Yeah.
Or I don't even remember what that's supposed to be. Broadway came with a piece of slime that he ate on episode 1. That was it. Someone had to mold that and paint it and design it and find out how to put it in the package for some stupid 1 second gag. It's ridiculous.
Well, some of that, I'm assuming, is psychological.
Absolutely.
They want to fill out the cost. They want the consumer to feel like they're getting their money's worth. And so they add these little things that are not that expensive to produce, but it kind of makes the figure feel more worth it.
Oh, he came with 4 things. One of them was a piece of slime, but he came with 4 things.
Yeah, 4 accessories. They can put that on the box.
And I'm sure they did their market research and they understand that, yes, that is a real thing. There's perceived value. There's actual value and perceived value with everything. He should have come with a much more poignant crushed gun.
Yeah.
Neca. But no, he came with a piece of slime. That was what was worth it. Oh, and we need to give him popcorn and a chicken wing, because he's fat.
Well, how about the half-folded wings that they had 90% of the time? Like, that you can get the open wings, you can get the folded wings.
That is a whole nother video. Like, when I get Lexington, we're gonna do a whole video on the gargoyles. But the short version is, I don't know who was in that meeting that day when they decided what to do with the wings, because I'm sure that was a big issue. How do we do the wings? Some guy must have been really turned on that day. He had his salesman pitch. He's like, you know what, guys? We'll do flying wings for all of them. Not the half-folded ready action wings that they had 90% of the time. We'll do flying wings. No one's gonna pose these things flying because we don't give them stands to pose them flying, but we'll give them flying wings. That's what we'll do, and it'll take up most of the packaging.
I'm sensing a little bit of animosity towards NECA.
Dumb. It's dumb. No, I really like NECA. I really do like the stuff. I think for the slightly cheaper price point as compared to Super 7 or Four Horsemen, it's a really good product. And I like how they have the double joints. That's a big thing with me now. This has set such a standard for me. If you don't have 2 joints in your elbow, get out of here. Look at him pin in the arm.
Giant pins, too.
Giant pin in the arm.
And they're so far recessed.
He can't even do 90 because he's so small. And maybe these anthropomorphic, very agile cat people, you can't pose these things. Another issue I have, and this is a Super 7 Thundercats thing specifically, but the rubberized clothes, yes, you have much more of a cartoon aesthetic and clean lines. You cover up joints doing that, but I don't want to pose them like that because over time it'll stretch out the rubbery underwear. This is an anthropomorphic cat person. You want him crouching. You want him doing these awesome action poses. These figures can't do that. So yes, it looks like clean lines and everything. You took it off the screen, but
except for the giant pins.
Except for the giant pins, but it can't do any of the things that you see Lino do on the screen. It's ridiculous. You go over here to these major release, major toy company, and they're doing the higher end too, like Crocmaster came with the alligator, 2 baby alligators, a chain, a hook, a gun, a knife, a whip. He came with a lot of stuff, but he was also in a big box. But again, it goes back to that perceived value versus actual value. And I'm sure it goes into parts budget too. Just like Lego, there might be some leftover budget for this guy, so throw him a hook.
Also, with G.I. Joe specifically, there's also the nostalgia factor that these characters originally came with a whole bunch of accessories. So many of them came with backpacks and guns and 2 or 3 different little handguns. You know, the original Crocmaster came with the whip and the croc and the da-da-da-da-da. With G.I. Joe specifically,
I remember that.
It's built in.
You don't have the paint apps in between the muscles or gradations on the face, so you do have some color on the lips and around the eyes and stuff.
For a general release retail figure, it's painted really well. He's got his scar on there and that's painted.
But none of the armor has the additional detail or scratches or worn marks. It's a solid piece of plastic with no paint on it, unless it's the red. So my question is to you, is it worth it?
To me, no. I'm I'm a Hasbro fanboy. To me, I really like the G.I. Joe classifieds. This is super cool, but I also like the more modern stuff anyway. I feel like these are too expensive for what you get. They're very heavy. So you're the one with all these figures. All these figures are yours except for this one that I brought. Let me ask you, are these guys worth it?
So I started down this rabbit hole with the Thundercats because I always wanted a Thundercats. When Bandai got the release, they made the big ones. I bought those. Those didn't sell well, so they scaled it down. I bought those. I want some really good Thundercats. And then Super 7 got them, so I was like, okay, here we go again. Let's buy these. I just really wanted good Thundercats. And then as I got into Four Horsemen and now just recently Neca, I was like, wow, these aren't that good. I know Super 7 has a history with Mattel and the He-Mans. I know there's some Super 7 super fans out there, but me personally, they are not worth that price. I haven't collected the He-Mans and all that, and I know they're doing a ton of other stuff. The 6-inch Thundercats, they're too expensive for what you get, and the technology is behind the times, especially when I opened the package and got this guy out. $25, half the price. Half the accessories, every accessory you need. No extra head. Do I need an extra head on Zaymot? A knowing smirk, I think, is his only expression.
He eats cake like that.
Yeah. He's like, could you eat cake and maintain this abs? I don't think so. Sorry, I really want a Thundercat.
Tell me, because he looks awesome.
He poses okay.
Now, he has minimal joints, but that's for aesthetics.
Those things are awesome. I think that's where the minimal joints come from, because they're over the lines. They don't have the big, gaping chest, so they only have the ball in the waist. And they do that, like you said. Yeah, the paints come off the joints, as you see, as they rub together. So that's a huge thing. They color the joints in the main color, but then they paint over it. And so that ball joint scrapes against each other, and then it comes off. The paint just rips right off. These are not meant to play with. They're meant to pose once and never touch again.
This is basically a posable statue.
Yeah.
Whereas these, Mattel and Hasbro, they're toys.
They're action figures.
They're meant to be played with.
Yep. Though these...
So what do you want in your collection? Do you want these awesome, super detailed, not as articulate, wonderfully painted, fuzzy underwear figures, or do you want toys?
It depends on what it is, I guess. The question, is it worth it, is always going to go to, well, they're the ones that have the license. Super 7 is the only one that has Thundercats. If I want a high-end detailed Thundercat, I have to go to Super 7, even if I don't like them. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You could say, no, I'll wait, or I just won't get them.
You know what is weird, though? If you want a good Ninja Turtle, you can go anywhere. Everybody's making
What's the deal, Ninja Turtles? They're the whores of the action figure world. They'll go to anyone. Explain the specialness of this Fortnite one.
This was one of the first uses of 3D printed paint, as far as I know, that I could find.
This is Hasbro, right?
This is Hasbro, and this is an awesome figure. This is the only Fortnite figure I have, just because I thought it looked cool. But look at the arms and the legs, and it's got a gradiated paint to it, where it actually fades to make it look more game accurate. And this one has the pinless joints, and it is super posable.
Yeah.
There's a red version.
Are you gonna get that?
I don't know.
Sounds like a yes.
Well, these G.I. Joe are pretty awesome.
So, yeah, Kyle didn't want to collect these G.I. Joe, but they're so good! We did have a lot of the G.I. Joe figures. We didn't have a lot of the vehicles and playsets.
We had some of the smaller ones. So there's the nostalgia factor with these. Compared to these are great, but I like toys better.
You're gonna pose them a lot.
I move them around. I was able to get a Duke, and he's attacking Optimus Primal right now. What's that gorilla doing there? But yeah, these are fantastic, especially for the price when you compare them to these guys. And I like the more modern stuff. And it's G.I. Joe.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention some of the higher end, what Mattel is doing, this adult-centered Masterverse line He-Man. I think this is actually a hodgepodge of characters. I think this is a faker with pieces from another He-Man to create a He-Man. So I don't think technically this figure exists.
He-Man's really confusing because there's so many different lines right now.
Oh, like Ninja Turtles?
And it's all the same company. Ninja Turtles, you can kind of say, okay, yeah, because like so many different companies are making them, but this is all Mattel. And they're making the cartoon accurate, they're making the movie one, they're making something in between, they're making the retro ones. Hard to keep up.
The He-Man has the ball joint chest. Like, let's say Mr. Crocmaster here, he has the ratcheted single hinge.
But he also has the waist pivot, so he can turn as well.
So he can't do this though.
You need him to do that?
I mean, He-Man needs to do that, right?
I will say I like the G.I. Joe scale better.
He-Man's a little tall.
He's big. All these guys are big. Even the Marvel Legends, they're on like almost a 7-inch scale, not a true 6, where these guys are more the 6-inch scale.
So you like the hinge in the chest better for the
I don't
guys?
think they even stop.
The women tend to have the ball joint that they put under their womanly chestular area.
Maybe because it's smaller.
And then we have an example of a regular retail for kids toy Skeletor versus the high-end adult-centered, much more posable, still Mattel though, not Neca or anything else.
What is the price difference?
These are actually offered super cheap.
10 to 15.
And then these things are in the $20 to $25 range.
And that's still pretty good. And they're big.
Another cost thing is the amount of pieces, of course. The more joints you add, that's an additional cost. They do not have the gradiated paint at all, the multiple paint apps. In general, lesson learned is if you just want a really good action figure and you don't care what it is, you want posability, you want it to look good, you want it to be at an affordable price. Right now, I don't think there's anything on the market that beats G.I. Joe Classified.
Really? Better than Batty? Better than Mattel's stuff?
Tell me what you think. These things are so good, so posable. They have the extra shoulder joint.
Yeah, he's good. The G.I. Joes are better.
What makes them better?
Not a huge fan of He-Man. I mean, I like He-Man. I understand He-Man. I like the modern stuff better. He's good. So, the hinge is, so some of they're different, which is another thing that's kind of weird about these. So some of them have an up and down hinge with the wrist, and the other wrist is a left and right, and that's so they can hold the rifle.
Whereas the Thundercats came with, and some of the others come with two. So there's this version and there's this version. Again, driving up the cost. Like Crocmaster, I think both of his are left and right.
Yeah, a lot of them are left and right, but then Duke, he has one way, one the other.
What is your view on accessories?
I think what the Classified come with is perfect. It's just those few. They have the rubberized hands, so they can hold a knife. They have the gun hand, but they can hold a knife. Because I get Transformers, and they have hard plastic hands usually. Everybody's got a fist. Sometimes you'll have an open hand, and sometimes they have a hinge, but everybody's got the hard plastic fist. As far as modern figures, I'm pretty new to it. I've only gotten a few of the Classified.
Probably gonna get some more. We're going down this rabbit hole with the Classified. Look at this alligator.
Crocodile,
sorry. Look at this crocodile. I pretty much bought this for two reasons. Crocmaster, the nostalgia, because we had the Crocmaster. But this alligator is amazing. Compare that to, I have Bronx, which is also very, very good. It's a lot heavier. It's a lot stiffer.
That's another thing I wanted to say. The high-end figures are way heavier. There's just more plastic in it, which I don't like, because that means they don't stand up as well. Some people are obsessed with Transformers having die-cast. I don't like die-cast, because it just makes it unnecessarily heavy for no reason.
Do you see a future for these high-end getting more and more expensive and more accessories, or do you think people are gonna have the opposite, where these general retail major distributor, their technology, since they're always on the cutting edge of the technology, and that Mattel and Hasbro are always gonna be ahead on the technology, making the figures better and cheaper? Do you think these will ever phase out or get so expensive that no one wants to buy them? What do you see as the future for these?
I think there's a market for everything. I think there's different collectors. There's some people who like this stuff. They can go for the more expensive figure because they're only going to buy a couple. These figures, way more affordable. G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man had so many characters. They kind of have to make them cheaper just so you can get all the characters that you want. You can complete collections. Hasbro said that's something that's always in their mind when they make collections, is completing a certain group. But I think there's always going to be a market for these, especially when you get to licensed stuff. You go to Hasbro, who makes Disney properties, and they say, hey, you want to do gargoyles? And they run it through their machine, and they say, no, it's not profitable enough. So somebody else
niche. It's too niche for them. Whereas so a Neca or Super 7 has to make them because they can say, oh, this will explode. You know, there's this niche market. There aren't any other gargoyle toys out there right now. People want this stuff.
And I think some people forget that these are companies. They have to make money. If they don't make money, they can't make the stuff you want.
Yeah.
So talk with your wallet. If you like them, buy them. If you don't like them, don't buy them, and then they'll go away. Let me ask you this. Which is more fun.
Oh, definitely the figure that I'm not afraid to like scratch the expensive paint on it. If he breaks, I'll get another one.
Do you feel like he is going to break?
No, they're soft enough plastic. I think the chest is the only super hard plastic in any of these figures. Apparently CoverGirl has had a problem with her arm coming off. I've watched a review where the arm was actually off in the package, but you just pop it back on and it's fine, and the seam is fine. These, if you have to take the skirt off or pop something off, it's very scary. They famously did the underwear on Panthro wrong, and I've seen people break it, pulling it apart. That's a $50 figure you just broke. There's a $25 figure I just broke, with much more options for interchangeable parts. What was your question again?
I said, which one is more fun? I thought you'd have to think about it. No, you immediately said the G.I. Joe Classified.
I sat there and just played with this thing on the 2.5-hour car trip back. Whereas that, posed him a little bit, okay, and put him back in the package.
How does he compare?
He just doesn't have, like, they have the extra hinge in the shoulder. For me, accessories, going back to my question to you, my answer to it, is I would love to have more expressions and anything that is significant to the character. I don't want Broadway to come with a popcorn bucket or a piece of slime. He needs to come with things that are significant to the character, things that happen, keystone episodes. If it's a nostalgic property. If it's something like this guy, I think you said the nostalgia has to come with the guns that he came with originally, right? The whip, for him, it has to be the sword, the shield, and the axe for He-Man. But that's it. Extra heads would be cool. I don't have to have that, but I don't need the fist, the relaxed hand, the grabbing hand, the pointing hand, the gnarly hand. I don't need all that unless it's significant to the character. Yeah. If Goliath was always doing this, then he needs to come with a face, but not a piece of slime.
Lady J, she came with the hair with the hat and the hair without the hat. And I looked at that and I was like, hair with the hat, always.
Always, right? What are you gonna do with that extra head? Once you throw away the package,
well, it's just the hair. So I'm gonna just put it in a baggie. Storm Shadow came with the hood up, hood down. I put the hood up. I like the hood down better. I'm probably never gonna put the hood up again.
Yeah.
If you're on the fence about classified, go ahead and grab one.
Just grab one. Find one figure that you like and go ahead and grab it. And I think you'll be converted.
The twins are great. She is not as good. She's not as poseable. She doesn't have the double joints. Really great looking figure, but not as poseable.
I think for me in the future, I'm going to shy away from high-end. I've been totally converted. Unless it's a property where it's like, wow, I really need that in my life, I'm probably not going to pursue these niche craft figures anymore. Your expectations aren't as high either. It's $25 versus $50. There's an expectation you gotta set. Now, we talked about paint is a big issue. I do have some issues with paint on a few things. Like, she had a paint scratch, a little muck-up on her glove, CoverGirl did. But for the most part, man, these were right on.
What about the scale? Now, the G.I. Joe are the smallest scale.
I mean, smaller is better if you can fit all the cool joints and stuff. They take up less shelf space. If you want to bring some for a party, you can fit more in a bag.
Well, standing up, if they're really heavy, they don't stand as well.
That's true, yeah.
And stands, when you get these little cheap Amazon stands, these will not hold up a Transformer. You have to get them just right to hold it, and it's only the smaller figures, because Transformers are bigger anyway. This would not hold that Skeletor.
Yeah, that's our opinion. What is yours? If you're on the fence with classified, like he said, I would go ahead and pick at least one up. Find a figure you like, find a character you connect with, pick them up and see what you think. High-end figures, again, unless it's a property I just gotta have, I don't think I'm touching them anymore. Hasbro, Mattel, they've sold me. You just can't beat that price for what you're getting.
Yeah, these are beautiful. But if you want a toy, go this way. If you want something to sit on your shelf and you can say,
that was expensive.
Yeah, back at you, buddy. You know, someone to brandish an axe at you every day and you're like, you too, big guy.
Thank you so much for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe and do all those YouTube things if you've made it this far in the video.
Get out of here, you crazy kids, and go buy some toys.
Do it. It's your responsibility.
As an American.
Yes.
As a responsible adult.